Okay, I'll just wait for 5 more minutes, uh, just for others if they come, and then after that we'll start our class. Till that time, if you have any doubts from the previous class, you can ask your doubts. We'll clear those doubts. Okay, so I have the doubt about the phloem tissue. So phloem tissue, it is basically not in your syllabus, but still to give you an idea, the phloem tissue is also a transportation tissue, and those tissues are used to transport the food which the leaves make to all the parts of the plant. Okay, so this is what the phloem tissues are used for. I hope it's clear. Okay, any doubts? Let's wait for two minutes more, or else we'll start. Any doubts from anybody? You're free to ask your doubts now. So you all understood whatever was taught in the previous class? Yes, you can join this class. And for the previous class, you can go to our YouTube channel, that is S2S classes, and there you can find the recording of the previous class. Okay. Okay. So someone has asked me to tell something about the guard cells. So guard cells are those cells which are present at the stomata, and they control the entry and exit of CO2 and water vapors from the stomata. Okay, so these are guard cells. They are basically kidney shaped. I hope it's clear. Any more doubts that I have? Any doubts? If you don't have any doubt, you can write no doubts. So can understand that you don't have any doubts. If there are no doubts, please send a message that you have no doubt. Okay, so I feel no one else is going to join, or if they want to join, they'll join in between. So we'll be starting with today's class. So everything that we discussed yesterday, we started with what nutrition is, what nutrients are, okay, and how plants make what are the modes of nutrition that are there, how plants make their food. That is, we saw that they are autotrophs, they are heterotrophs, and they are these two are the basic modes of nutrition. And after that, when we saw the autotrophs, we realized that they make their food through the process of photosynthesis, and mostly all the plants are there as autotrophs. So then when we talked about photosynthesis, we saw the equation of photosynthesis, and after that, after seeing the equation of photosynthesis, we discussed a bit about photosynthesis, and then we studied the various raw materials which are required, how we obtain those raw materials, and then After all this, we discussed about chlorophyll, and then we discussed about how the other colored leaves can perform photosynthesis. After discussing all this, we moved on to what we moved on to the production of carbohydrates, and we discussed that it is not only carbohydrates that the plants can produce, but they can also produce other nutrients like proteins. So today I have a question for you to start with. So can you tell me, uh, can photosynthesis occur in any other in any other part? Okay, I'll write it down for you. Can photosynthesis take place in other parts of plant? Okay, so anyone who knows the answer to this, please raise your hand. Okay, so there's an answer by Abhivandya which says it can take place in young stems. Anyone else who wants to answer, you can raise your hand. I will unmute you and then you can tell me. So I have a hand raised. Yes. Hello.
Sir, young parts of stem.
Okay, that is one. And what else?
Leaves.
Leaves. Okay, so I'll explain this to you. Okay, so there's one more answer by Angela which says yes, it can take place. So now I'll explain this to you. Okay, so yes, your answers were correct. It can take place in green stems and branches of the plant. Okay, so green stems and green branches of plants can also undergo photosynthesis. Okay, now I'll give you an example. You all know the you all know what a cactus is. Okay, so everyone knows what a cactus is. Have you seen any leaves on a cactus plant? Okay, wait, I'll unmute you all. Okay, I have unmuted everybody. So please tell me, are there any leaves on the cactus plant?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So there are no leaves on cactus plant.
No, sir. Leaves are reduced into spines.
We can say that the leaves of the cactus plant are reduced into spines. So, but they also perform photosynthesis. Okay.
Okay.
So what happens is there, like the stem of these plants, it does the photosynthesis process. Okay.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
cactus is an example of a plant where the photosynthesis takes place in other parts. Okay. It's clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I hope everything is clear to you about photosynthesis.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now we'll move on to, now we have seen the autotrophic mode of nutrition, okay? Where the process of photosynthesis we discussed. Now when we were discussing nutrition, I told you about two modes of nutrition. Okay, but I would like to add one more to it. The first one was autotrophic. Okay. The second one was heterotrophic. And the third one being saprophytic. Okay. I'll discuss all of these with you. So now we know about autotrophic mode of nutrition in plants. Okay. I'll mute you all because there's a bit of disturbance. If you have any doubts, you can raise your hand, then we'll take up your doubts.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so now we have seen the autotrophic mode of nutrition in plants. Okay, so we are considering just plants for now. Now we will see a bit of more like plants. There are certain plants which have heterotrophic mode of nutrition also. So now we'll be focusing onto them. So now what we'll be seeing is the heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Heterotrophic mode of nutrition in plants. So when we talk about heterotrophic mode of nutrition in plants, we know that plants which have chlorophyll, they can perform photosynthesis and obtain their food. So here we are basically, what we are discussing over here is nutrition in plants that do not contain chlorophyll. Nutrition in plants that do not contain chlorophyll. Okay, so I'll just have you all seen a garden? We all have been to a garden. So, okay, I'll unmute you all for a moment and we'll discuss this. Okay, so we all have seen a garden and there's a bush, like a boundary of bushes. Mostly they do a boundary of bush around a garden. Okay, hello.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
So, have you seen some yellow thread-like structures on these bushes?
Yes, sir. No,
Uh,
sir.
No, sir. No, sir.
okay, if just give me a moment, I'll see if I can get the image for you. So I'll get in the next class I'll get an image of the same for you. So what happens is we have certain bushes, or if on any plant, have you seen some yellow thread like structures?
No.
No,
No.
sir.
Okay, so I'll show uh, I'll send an
This is my
image.
air, okay.
Okay, I'll mute you all, there's a bit of disturbance. Okay, so what happens is I'll send you all a picture of the same, where you can, in the group, I'll send you a picture. So there you can see what these yellow structures which I'm talking about are. So these are basically a type of plant only which don't have chlorophyll. So there are many plants that do not contain any chlorophyll. So they are unable to prepare their food by themselves. So they rely on other plants and animals for their food. Okay. So when we discuss this, there are majorly two modes that we'll be discussing over here. The first one will be parasitic plants. Parasitic plants. And the second one are insectivorous plants. Okay, so now firstly I'll discuss with you what parasitic plants are. So firstly we'll be discussing parasitic plants and then we'll move on to insectivorous plants. So moving ahead with first parasitic plants. So what happens in a parasitic plant is, just give me a moment. Yeah, so parasitic plants are those plants which live on some other plant, like as I was saying just now, those yellow plants which I was telling about, they live on other plants and they rely on them for their nutrition. So what happens is, suppose I have a particular bush over which these yellow, I'll draw it for you if you can. Okay, so suppose we have a certain bush kind of thing over here which has all the leaves over them. There is leaf all over, so we have this bush. Now what happens is, over this bush there will be thread-like structure which are yellow in color. They are present all over the bush. I'll show you I'll send you the clear image also, the image that from where you can, the real image from where you can interpret how they actually look. So these yellow structures uh, are present on the plants which can make their own food. So what happens is, when the host, the okay, so in this there are two parts. The first two members in this, the first one is the host and the second one is the parasite. So host is that plant over which the parasite grows. So the plant over which the parasite grows is the host, and parasite is that plant which cannot make its own food. So in this case, the bushes are the host and the yellow plants that I am talking about, they are the parasites. So the host, they make their food, they make their food. And these parasites, they all, they take up a part of food made by host. So you understand how do they obtain their nutrition? The parasitic plants, what they do is, these are some plants that live on other plants for their nutrition and they are called the parasites. So what happens is, they take part of the food that is made by the host. And I'll give you the example. The plant that I am telling you, which is yellow in color, it is named as Cuscuta. Okay, at the end of the class, I'll show you the image also. So this is how, this is the name of the plant, and there are various more parasites that are present. So Cuscuta is one such plant. Okay, I hope it's clear to you all. Any
Yes,
doubt,
sir.
any doubts regarding parasitic plants, you can ask. I'll wait for 30 seconds. You can go through this, and if you have any doubts, you can ask me. It's clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll see the second type. which were the insectivorous plants. So we have the second insectivorous plants. Okay, so when talking about the insectivorous plants, you all must have heard of plants that eat insects. So one such like it is quite a common plant you all must have heard about is a pitcher plant. Okay, so is there anyone who knows about a pitcher plant, or have you heard about pitcher plant? Okay, so there is a hand raise. Yes.
Like it's like a vase, and there will be tiny hair-like thing, and when the insects comes and sits on it, the cap closes.
Okay, that's correct. So I have another hand raise. I'll take that also. You're correct. Yes, Angela.
Like it's like a picture, so when insects go into it, they get tangled and the lid, then there's some tangled structures are there, and when they go inside, the lid type thing closes.
Okay, so you guys have basic idea about what a pitcher plant is. That's good. So we'll be discussing the same. Okay, so what an insectivorous plant is, there are some plants which depend, some plants depend upon insects for the food. Okay, for their food. Wait, I'll erase this. For their food, and thus are called pitcher, thus are called insectivorous plants. Okay, so now we know what exactly an insectivorous plant is. So what happens is the leaves of these plants, they are modified into a pitcher-like structure. You all know what a pitcher is. A pitcher is basically like a vase-like container. Okay, so the leaves are modified into a pitcher-like structure. Leaves modified to pitcher-like structure.
Modified.
Okay, please mute your mics. Yeah, and the top part of the leaf, it acts as a lid. Okay, and top part of leaf acts as a lid which can open or close the pitcher. Okay, so I hope it's clear to you all. Now, when we move ahead, there are certain hair-like structures in the downward direction. So I got these points from you, like it has a pitcher-like structure, a lid, and hair-like structures. Hair-like structures. And one thing to remember about is they are in downward direction. Okay. So these hair-like structures, they are present which trap the insect. And the pitcher, when it captures an insect, it secretes some digestive juices which helps in digestion of the insect. Okay, so they secrete digestive juices to digest the insect. And the examples are, we know, the pitcher plant, the Venus flytrap, etc. So I hope you all know what insectivorous plants are. They are those plants which depend upon insects for their food. So what happens in them is that their leaves are modified into a pitcher-like shape, and the top part of the leaf, it acts as a lid which can close and open the pitcher. So inside the pitcher, there are certain hair-like structures which are pointing towards the downward direction, and when a fly or an insect enters the pitcher, it is not able to come out and the lid closes. Now what happens is these insectivorous plants, they secrete their digestive juices onto the insect to digest the insect. So this is how these insectivorous plants, they obtain their nutrition. Okay, I hope it's clear to you all. Any doubts that we have regarding this? Any doubts?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing no
No,
doubts,
sir.
I think we'll move ahead now. Okay, so this is there are the two methods. Okay, so now we discussed the heterotrophic mode of nutrition also in plants. So when we talk about heterotrophic mode of nutrition in plants, what we notice here, in heterotrophic mode of nutrition, we had the parasitic plants and the insectivorous plants. Okay, so we discussed both of them in detail. So I would like you all to first go through the parasitic plants that we discussed. I'll give you 30 seconds. You go through both of them and then I will be showing you images for both. Okay. So please go through them once. In the time being, I'll get images for you. If you have any doubts, you can ask me.
Parasitic host over which the parasitic grows. Host और वैसा like इसमें उदय है over which parasite grows वैसा तो क्या दीजिए हाँ वो बोलिया है over which parasite grows
Any doubts?
ये doubts पूछता मैं इसको what's the meaning of real meaning of host?
Host. Oh, okay. I'll explain you. So, please just keep your mics muted if you have any disturbance around you. So for the one which asked me what a host means, a host is basically like whenever there is a guest into your house, you are the host to the guest. Similarly, there is a foreign or external plant which grows on a plant. Okay,
Okay.
So the plant on which the parasite, that is the external plant, grows is known as the host. Okay.
Okay.
So I hope it's clear.
Yes, sir.
That's great. Now I'll move on to the insectivorous plants, and you can 30 seconds are there. You can see what insectivorous plants are, and if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Okay, it's clear to you all, both the plants. Both the plants are clear to you all.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, so now just give me a moment. I'll show you the images. Okay,
फोटो एक चीज बताता हूँ, फोटो आपको
so
दिखती है?
you can clearly see over here. You can see the bunch of plants, and there are yellow thread-like structures onto it. Can you see this image? Hello,
Yes.
this image is visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you can see the green plant is there, and over which there are these yellow thread-like structures. Okay.
Okay, sir.
To show you another image, it is somewhat like this. Okay, here you can see the green plant and these thin yellow thread-like structures. So this green plant is known as the host, and this yellow thread-like structures that you are seeing, this is Cuscuta, which I gave you the example of, and this is a parasite. Now what happens is, this yellow Cuscuta, it obtains its food from this green plant. Okay, this green plant performs photosynthesis, and these Cuscuta takes a part of the food that is produced by this plant. Okay, now it's clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Okay,
sir.
and now to show you the pitcher plant, this is one more, this is the second image. Now I told you, you can see this clearly, the leaf, it is in some pitcher like structure. Okay, and the top of the leaf, it is converted into a lid. Okay, and to show you the hair like structure inside it, clearly over here you can see the small hairs that are protruding inside. Okay, is it visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now you know both the things that we discussed, the parasitic plants also and the insectivorous plants also. Okay, clear? No doubts. Now you have seen the images also. Shall we move ahead with the
Yeah.
next?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we have discussed autotrophic, we have discussed
Heterotrophic.
heterotrophic. Now one that is left is saprophytic. Okay, so now we'll be moving on to saprophytic. Now what we'll be discussing is saprophytic mode of nutrition.
Ma sound கம்மி பண்ணுங்கம்மா.
Okay, I'll mute you all for now. Is there anyone who knows what saprophytic mode of nutrition is? Please raise your hand. Okay, so I have a hand raised. Just a moment. Yeah. Just a moment. There is a lot of disturbance. Okay. Firstly, tell me what an example? Yes, you had raised your hand. What do you know about saprophytic mode of nutrition?
A saprotrophic mode of nutrition means the organisms that obtain nutrients from the dead or decaying organic matters.
Okay, you're
Oh
correct.
God, he's, he's too good for this class.
Okay, that's correct. So, saprophytic mode of nutrition, it contains those organisms which survive on the decaying food and the decaying organisms. Now, this mode of nutrition is known as a saprophytic mode of nutrition, and those organisms. Okay, so we'll go one by one. Okay, so what exactly is saprophytic mode of nutrition? Nutrition is obtained from dead and decaying animals and food. Okay, and the organisms which have saprophytic mode of nutrition, they are known as saprophytes. These organisms are known as saprophytes. Okay, so what happens is, suppose we clear, so mushroom is one example for it. Now what happens in this mode of nutrition is, this is some decaying matter is there, and suppose we have a mushroom, maybe mushroom is there, which is a saprophyte. So what happens is, this mushroom that we have, it secretes digestive juices onto the dead and decaying matter, and then these juices convert the matter into a solution, and then the saprophyte which is present, it absorbs the nutrients from this solution. So this goes in a step-by-step manner. What happens is, the first thing that happens is, the saprophyte secretes digestive juices on decaying and dead matter. Okay, so this is the first step. The second thing that happens is, these digestive juices, they convert the matter into a solution. Matter into a solution. Okay, now what happens is, the saprophyte absorbs the nutrients from the solution. Okay, I hope it's clear to you all. How does a saprophyte obtains its food, or what a saprophytic mode of nutrition is? And when talking about examples, the examples of the same are mushroom or any fungi, okay, and etc. Okay, so it's clear to you all. Any doubts regarding the same, regarding saprophytic mode of nutrition?
No, sir.
You know what a fungi is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great.
No doubt, sir.
Okay, now the question is bacteria a saprophyte? Okay, so when we are talking about bacteria, bacteria is not a single organisms, but a group of organisms are known as bacteria. Okay, so when talking about bacterias, there is not a single organism. So we talk about the whole group. So there are certain bacteria, and they are, so bacteria is a group and there are a number of organisms. Some can be saprophytic, some can be parasitic in nature, and some can be symbiotic in nature. So symbiotic I'll be discussing after this. So you cannot say there are bacteria which are saprophytic, and if you want an example of a saprophytic bacteria, uh, I'll tell you the examples also for a saprophytic bacteria. So when talking about bacteria, it is not a single organism. Okay, keep that in mind. When you talk about bacteria, there are millions of organisms that come under the term bacteria. So to give you an example, Acetobacter is one, which is a bacteria which has saprophytic mode of nutrition. Then there are bacteria which have parasitic mode of nutrition. Then there are bacteria which have symbiotic mode of nutrition also. So you can talk to this. Now, if this is clear to you all, can we move on to the symbiotic mode of nutrition?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So now moving on to symbiotic mode of nutrition. Okay, just a moment. So now what we'll be discussing is we saw the heterotrophic mode. Heterotrophic mode. In this, we discussed parasitic and then another one we got was insectivorous. Now, what we will be discussing the next is after all this, and then we had the saprophytic, and in the last class we had discussed about the autotrophic. So after all this, we'll be studying about the symbiotic relationship. Symbiotic relationship. Now, in this, what happens is, like in parasitic mode of nutrition, we saw that two plants or two organisms, they lived together, and one took its food from the other. Now in symbiotic relationship, what happens is there are two organisms living together, but what they do is they share their food, they share their shelter, or in simpler words, they help each other to survive. So in symbiotic relationship, I'll give you a definition for the same first. Sometimes organisms live together sometimes organisms live together to share shelter and food. Okay, so this kind of relationship is known as the symbiotic relationship. I hope it's clear. So I'll give you an example of the symbiotic relationship. So I'll give you two examples. The first one is, you know, that rhizobium, it is a bacteria. It is present in the roots of leguminous plants. Okay, so now the leguminous plants are those plants like the pulses, they produce the pulses, leguminous plants. So what happens is the leguminous plants provide shelter and food, whereas the rhizobium, which we are seeing, it converts nitrogen in air to usable form. Okay, so they both are helping each other. Now the leguminous plants need nitrogen to grow. So this rhizobium, it takes and they cannot take and these plants cannot take nitrogen directly from air. So what rhizobium does is it takes the nitrogen from air, it converts it into a form in which the plants can absorb the nitrogen, and in return the plants provide them shelter and food. So this is one example. Now second example that we have is of there are certain organisms that contain chlorophyll and they are known as algae. Okay, they are organisms which contain chlorophyll, and the algae, they live with fungus, and this relationship is known as lichens. This relationship is known as lichens, where the algae provides food. Algae provides food and nutrition, whereas the fungus, it provides shelter and absorbs water and mineral, etc. So these are two examples of symbiotic relationship. So symbiotic relationship is a relationship where two organisms live with each other and they both are of benefit to each other. So how are parasitic mode of nutrition and symbiotic relationship different is that in parasitic mode of nutrition, one organism is at loss, that is the host is at loss, whereas the parasite, it obtains its food. But in a symbiotic relationship, both the organisms are at a benefit. Okay, I hope it's clear to you all.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what happens is the first example. Okay, so there's a question that fungi and fungus are different. Fungus is singular and fungi is plural form of fungus. Okay, so they both are the same. Now, the first example that I told you, which said that the bacteria rhizobium, it is present in the roots. It converts the nitrogen gas in the air into a usable form of nitrogen that can be consumed by plants. So
Okay.
this is very beneficial for the soil. Okay, we know
Okay.
that the soil needs nutrients.
Yes.
The soil need is beneficial for soil.
Okay.
As the soil needs nitrogen for the plants to grow. And this relationship is also an example of symbiotic relationship. So what happens is sometimes while growing crops, the farmers, they do not use fertilizers, and instead of that they use such crops. They grow leguminous crops. So what happens is when they grow leguminous crops, there is rhizobium bacteria in the soil which converts the nitrogen from the air into a usable form and makes the soil nitrogen rich. Okay, so in this manner they do not need to use fertilizers. Okay, it's
Okay,
clear to
sir.
you all?
Yes.
Any doubts that we have?
What is rhizobium?
Rhizobium is a bacteria.
Okay.
It is a bacteria that lives on the root. Okay, rhizobium, I'll write it down, just a minute. Rhizobium is a bacteria that lives in root nodules of leguminous plants. Okay, I hope it's clear. I hope it's clear to you all now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And give me a moment, I'll show you an image of the same. Okay, so I'll just, okay, so now you can see this image over here. You can see the roots are there, but there are certain small ball-like structures in the root. Okay, when you
Yes, sir.
see it in a magnified way, it is somewhat like this, which is the structure which is present over here now. This is the root, and over which there are certain ball-like structures which are present. These are the root nodules where the rhizobium lives. Okay,
Okay, sir.
so I hope it's clear to you all now.
Okay.
Any doubts that I have from this chapter? The
Uh,
whole which we have covered from starting?
yes, sir. One small doubt. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Can you just explain me heterotroph?
Okay. So heterotrophic mode of nutrition, it is the mode of nutrition where the plant where the plant cannot prepare its own food. Okay. So
Yes.
they depend on other plants or animals for their food. So under heterotrophic mode, we have two modes, two things we discussed in the heterotrophic mode, that are the parasitic plants and the insectivorous plants.
Okay. Okay.
So the parasitic plants, we saw that they are dependent on other plants for their food. Okay.
Okay, sir.
And the insectivorous plants, they depend upon the insects for their food.
Lesson होगा.
Okay. That's clear to you now? Is it clear to you now? The heterotrophic mode? Any more doubts that I have from this chapter? Anyone?
Oh, test or anything is there?
Okay, there will be a test of the same, but firstly, if you have, we'll first see the
Okay.
questions that are given in the book.
Okay.
In next class, we'll cover all the questions, and then
Okay.
after that, we'll move forward for a test. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So
उसको आप ये पूरा पढ़े वो बुक रखे नहीं उसमें से क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करको वो या रिवाइज करको फिर टेस्ट
So with this we have come to an end. We have come to an end with this chapter. So for now we'll end this class. You go through both the lectures.
வெறும்
This
நாலு டாபிக் அவ்வளவுதான்
okay. So these two lectures, they'll be uploaded on YouTube. The first lecture is already uploaded. This will also be uploaded by tomorrow. So you can go, you can watch these videos, and you can go through the notes and videos on the S2S app also. And then if you have any doubt from anywhere, we'll in the next class we'll take up all the doubts and we'll discuss some questions from this chapter. And after that we'll move forward for a test. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Any problems?
No.
Okay. Then I think we can end the class for today. No,
Okay.
tomorrow Sunday there are no classes. Sunday is an off.
Okay.
So
अब हमको
enjoy.
नहीं है तो लैपटॉप में कनेक्ट करना
Enjoy, stay safe and stay inside. Good night everybody. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Hello, sir.